whenever I answer the phone, I'm like, hello.
What pissed you off?
It's a great argument to have.
I love my mom, but I think she's half crazy for doing that.
How dare you?
Do you work with your girlfriend, Mark? Or your wife, Mark?
I keep them separated. Sometimes I call people, they don't answer the phone, I'm like,
Wrong number, click.
Well, he's not that smart, but sometimes he sounds like he knows what he's doing.
yeah.
Go.
But therefore, you're an ass, and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, but what do we know?
Hi, everyone. This is Mark.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm Jeff, and you're listening to What Do We Know?
So, I don't know if you guys want to talk about the elections, but I have changed my views on the importance of voting in America quite a bit within the last couple of years.
Well, if you're talking about midterms...
I'm just talking about voting in general.
Okay, and then I definitely have to hear what your thought process is, because there's been turns in multiple different directions that you could take this one.
I was going to say, I'm willing to bet that Mark is disgusted by the whole process at this point.
It's sort of a long-term thing that I think that America's sort of switching over to, is that democracy is sort of a farce right now. And it's not just because the way the election went, because I actually really didn't care, who Republicans or Democrats take the House.
Weed's legal in D.C. Woo.
Not yet.
Yeah, because
Well, it passed, but
no, it has to be passed by Congress too.
but I mean, but it passed this side of things.
Yeah, it passed. Sort of democracy. My view on voting right now is that it's allowed to be districted in such a way that your vote really doesn't matter, and the people who are, let's say, senators or governors, for the majority, are going to be the governors, senators for that state. And although there are some states that are swing, for the vast amount of America, your vote really doesn't matter, because if you're in a blue state, it's going to be a blue state. If you have a Republican governor, you're probably going to have a Republican governor. The senator, they don't have a fixed term limit, so that senator is going to probably be your senator for the next 5 or 10 years. And the more I try to think about how elections are done in America, the more I feel votes really don't matter.
I'm confused at how you just came to this. I mean, it's kind of how it's always been. It's always been, yeah, exactly like you said. There's a few swing states, but then you're either red or blue, and that's like all there is to it. It's what it always has come down to. We have a popular vote. Voted in one president who wasn't even the president because of the Electoral College. I mean, that happened, 12 years ago now, whatever, with Bush.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you're shocked at this.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're taught, even at a very young age, is that every person's vote matters. Every person has a vote, and how we vote as a country really affects change.
I think more what it comes down to is that it's still every vote matters, but every vote matters to parties that are broken in a political system that is not working.
Yeah, because, I mean, redistricting doesn't really matter. Like, if you have let's say, a very liberal city such as Dallas, you're not going to get a Democratic leader because the way it's districted. So your vote really doesn't matter.
I mean, I agree. There was that incumbent that was just ousted by the third party dude. I'm trying to remember what his name was, but I think that was a fluke type of deal because of the fact that nobody voted. Nobody thought it mattered, so nobody voted. So those who did were rallied by this one guy. And I think that is also a problem in America, is people don't vote because of the fact of what you just said. Is because they really don't feel like their vote matters. And 99% of the time, I'm going to agree with them. Because if you're in a hardcore red state or a hardcore blue state or a hardcore red district or a hardcore blue district, you're not changing anything. Unless you coincidentally get lucky and you're the only person that goes to the polls that day. I mean...
But I mean, there's like a pattern developing too, beyond that, where it's like and I don't know if this is just pattern or, it is what it is, but several presidents have been two-term now in a row. And the midterm of the second term of each president has gone overwhelmingly to the opposite party.
Right.
So
it's a pattern.
Yeah, America just gets tired of the guy who's been in there for 6 years, so they vote every one of the opposite party that midterm, his second term.
Right.
And that's just the way it's been, going on, 12,
Last
16
time they were
years.
like, man, a Republican? We need to get a Democrat in here. This guy's done nothing for us. And now they're like, a Democrat? Now we need a Republican.
Yeah, they've done nothing for us.
Because I was watching the news, and it was just talking about what a major loss it is to Democrats. And it just talks about how fed up Americans are with Democrats and blah, blah, blah. And then you find out, wait, the exact same thing happened to Bush and to
not on this scale.
And to Reagan. No, it's
wrong.
pretty much on this scale. If
This
you
was-
look,
it-
at
well, I
how
would
many
have to-
seats
I
are
would-
lost.
I'd have to look up the numbers, but it was something like this was as one-sided as an election has been since like the Civil War or
But
something
that's-
crazy.
That's not true, because that's exactly what they said with Bush.
Like I said, I would have to look up the stats, but I know there is something happened this year as far as turnover that goes back to the Civil War.
I also wonder if, I think less and less people are voting. I could be completely wrong on that. It could be more and more people that are voting now.
This turnout is
Actually,
terrible.
it's pretty low.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder, if everybody actually did vote, would it change anything?
Well, if everybody did vote, it would actually be mostly Democrats.
Yeah, I was
You
going
think
to
so?
say the turnout is usually in favor of the Democrats.
And here's the thing that's also really disturbing is that there's a lot of voter suppression. There's estimated over 500,000 people didn't get to vote just because the way they changed the laws for the voter ID law.
See, I read completely differently, or I heard stories completely differently right after this midterm election that basically said that there was no known issues related to the IDs. And the reason I remember this is because the reporter was obviously somebody completely against the ID law, so she threw something in at the end to try to kind of like do a 1-2 punch at him. And she said, as of now, there's been no known issues and no known reports of any problems with the whole, voter ID or people being unable to produce the right ID. But at the same time, people without IDs might just not have gone to the polls. And that's how she ended the story. And I was like, yep, there's that little punch you're trying to throw in there to still say that you're obviously what a horrible law this is. I personally am all for having to have an ID to vote. I don't understand why people are up in arms about that garbage.
Well, see, I'm not against
I have to have an
that
ID
either.
for everything else I do. I have to have an ID to go drink.
But the issue is how you get that ID. So if you have to take time off
Legally.
work, if you have to travel several miles to get it, some places in southern states, you have to drive like 20
How
or
can
30
you have
miles.
to take time off of
and
work?
take
You
time-
legally need an ID of some form to get a job, to fill out
Right.
your tax forms.
Well, not to get a job.
To fill out your tax forms. To be a legal worker, you need
I don't
one
believe
thing from
that's
column
true.
A or one thing from column B and column C. I filled out that I-9 form multiple times.
Wait, are you telling me you have to have photo ID to fill out your tax forms?
Yes. Well, let me look at what's in the columns and see what you
I don't-
could possibly.
I don't believe that's true.
Well, you have to have, for sure, to fill out like your tax information, you have to have like a social security number, and at that
Right,
point,
but that's not a photo ID, is it?
no, it's
Hold on,
not. But
let's
it gives
look.
you the tools.
Well,
to
that's
Yep.
the difference, right?
So the
What they
one thing
require.
that you would
Not
need
an
from
ID,
column
they
A.
require a photo ID, which is the issue. Because these people might have, let's say, social security numbers, but they don't have a photo ID that they accept. They accept, let's say, ID with
Here we go.
gun registration, but they don't accept photo IDs with colleges.
We're-
They accept photo IDs that are social securities with photos or with driver's licenses.
Okay, we're going to see how easy it can be. So in order to get a job, you have to fill
Yes.
out this I-9 form. To fill out the I-9 form properly, you in person must show either one document from List A or one document both from List B and List C. List
Okay.
A, if you only one thing, it's a U.S. passport, permanent resident card or alien card,
This is for
foreign
all states.
passport, the what?
I'm just asking if this is for all states.
This is federal government.
Okay.
Federal government form. an employee authorization document that contains photo for a non-immigrant alien authorization to work at the specific employer because of his or her status, a foreign passport and something else, or a passport from the Federated State of Micronesia. Specifically, they're called out for some reason. But either way, those are all photo documents.
Okay.
Or something from List B and List C. I'm going to try to just scan through here, not reading them all, and find things that aren't. Driver's license, obviously, is. ID card from the government is. School ID with photo is. Voter registration card. So there's one thing in column B I could use. That is U.S. military card or draft record. Draft record might not have a photo ID. A photo with it. A Native American tribal document. Driver's license. School record or report card. Hospital record. Daycare or nursery record. Those might not. But those have to go with something else.
But that's for a job, right? That's not for voting.
You just were talking about people having to take time off of work to get their photo ID, and I'm trying to rebuttal the fact that you can't work.
Are you saying this is what they need to vote?
This is what they need to get a job.
Right, but this doesn't necessarily mean that the people who want to vote have jobs.
Yeah, no, but your exact rebuttal was that they have to take time off of work to get their photo ID, and I'm saying they can't have the job without that photo ID.
Okay. So you're saying everybody that works have the qualifications to vote?
I would say that there is ways that you could get a job legally without having a photo ID, but it'd be few and far between on people that possess those exact documents.
I'm trying to think of a time where I actually had to show a photo ID to get a job. I don't think I had to do that for Donnelly or McDonald's.
Oh, you sure did for Donnelly and McDonald's, both.
I don't think I did.
Mark, I don't know what to tell you. It's the federal form that you have to fill out.
Okay, well, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, if anything, I'd probably just use my driver's license for the registration.
You probably use your driver's license and your social security card. I would bet you those are the two documents you used.
Well, I'm just saying, like I said, I don't know exactly what I did for those jobs for when I registered.
Well, you would have had to get taxes taken out. I mean, you have to.
No, because I give out my social security number, and that's how they get taxes out. But there's not a photo ID with a social security number.
It's the I-9 form. That's the documentation I was just reading. An I-9 form must be filled out in order to have taxes taken out.
Right.
The I-9 form requires those documents that I was just reading to you.
It requires my social security number, and it requires a photo ID.
Not necessarily, but you don't have any of the other documents that you would need on that list that I just read.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused on.
Have you never seen an I-9 form before? I'm very confused.
Apparently, because I did have jobs, but I do remember having to put in my social security number. I do not recall ever having to show anybody a form of photo ID to get a job.
Here, I just linked you to the file, and it's page 9 on the file in our Skype chat. And I'm sure it's familiar to either way. Going on. So, are you against the having to show a driver's license or a photo ID of some type to vote?
No, I think for most government or whatever voting thing, it should be mandatory. I actually do believe that it should be some proof that you have to show that you are who you are. I don't believe that it should be some kind of process to get the card. I think there should be something like, I want this card, I mail it or email it or whatever, and I fill out a form and they send it to me for free.
Then how would they know who you are? How does that verify who you are if it's something you can do without any type of process?
I don't know exactly how to answer that because I don't know what processes there can be done. I'm just saying that you can make it so that everyone can get this ID card without any cost or any time taken away from whatever they need to do. If they make it so you don't have to drive to get the card, because who knows what reasons why you can't drive to get the card, that would make it fairer. If you didn't have to pay any money to get the card, that would make it fairer for people who can't, who doesn't want to spend $30.
Who's going to pay for it then?
Just part of taxes.
It's been too long since I've had to do a voter registration card. But
Voter registration
do you have
is
to pay
free.
for that?
No, that's free.
That's what I thought.
I mean, you do it when you do your ID stuff.
Right. I was going to say, I think that is kind of done at the same time and sort of probably requires all kind, the identification we're talking about. But I was just playing devil's advocate to Mark's point that to get a voter ID card, I don't think you have to pay for it.
Yeah. This whole voter ID card thing, I'm not going to call out Republicans saying that this is just a scheme to prevent Democrats from voting. But
that's probably part of it, though.
The majority.
As the most Republican.
Because voter ID fraud is very, very slim. But if we want to go after voter ID fraud, there's probably a case to say that people who vote in person
are frauds.
Who are committing frauds probably did an absentee ballot. There's probably some kind of correlation with absentee ballot with voting in person. Maybe they forgot they did an absentee ballot. So if you were to say we should make votes so there is no fraud, it has to be all done in person. And we should get rid of absentee ballots. But because a majority of that is older generation people doing absentee ballots, that would really, really weaken Republican votes.
What do you mean absentee ballots are older generation people? Absentee ballots, the points of them is because you can't physically be in your voting area on voting day. Granted, right. I'm not saying that that's what they're used for all the time. I voted absentee before just because I didn't feel like waiting at the polls.
Right. But a vast majority of absentee ballots are from older generation people. There's, military also.
I was going to say military I thought was the biggest portion of absentee ballots. I could be wrong. I don't know, but I know that's a big
I think a lot
portion.
of seniors do too.
Well, a lot of seniors do it to avoid the having to wait.
So
right. But as far as the voter fraud that you were talking about, like, to me that seems, and I keep hearing these leading up to the election, I keep hearing about how voter fraud is almost slim to none as far as like provable cases of it. But when you then go to vote, it's like, it's amazing that it's not like this huge ordeal, because the people who work at the polling places, generally speaking, are seniors, or like, it's very low technology.
Technology.
It's just like, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, there's nothing. They literally, like, this last time and every other time previous, they like have a clipboard that they find your name and a piece of paper.
Well, there's two reasons for that. They want to make it accessible, but also very traceable of how people vote. One of the things that I find very disturbing this vote, a Democrat sent out some kind of form that said, like, your friends or your neighbors voted and you only voted whatever, so you get a report card or something saying how often you voted. And to me, that violates some kind of law. I'm not exactly sure. I know that you can't, there's a law that protects people from knowing how you voted. As in, if you voted for a Democrat, for a Republican, or for this person or that person. And that is to protect you so there's no repercussions on from your employers or whatever. But choosing not to vote, isn't that a form of voting? Should they be allowed to have that kind of information?
I don't see a problem with people knowing that I did or did not vote, but I also can stand behind why I did or did not do something, whereas I'm sure you're going to have people like, I mean, we've run into the problem before where people run on a campaign, politicians run on a campaign that they're specifically for one specific cause, and then people trace back their records and be like, yeah, but that was a vote 3 times in your state since you were there, and you never actually even went to the polls because you care about it that much. So I see it for that reason. I don't know. It does seem like it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy, though.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can see why people would not want that information out there. Like, personally, I don't care. It is what it is. But I can see why it would bother people, for sure.
That's privileged information. How you vote, if you choose to vote, that's your own personal deal.
It is kind of funny that would be a public record And nobody seems to have a big issue with that when they do go crazy, like you said at the beginning of the show about like Walmart collecting your personal information.
Data, yeah.
But it's like voting, no, that's fine. Government can collect whatever they want. I have no problems with that. I don't know. The elections are interesting. Like last time I went to the polls, I'm curious what's going to happen this time because I think I might be in a different district, and I did not vote in the midterms. I was working, so I actually couldn't physically make it to the poll.
You could have done an absentee ballot.
I could have done an absentee ballot. Yeah, I could have, but I did not. I didn't want to be called an old person and lumped in with them. But
I'm okay with that.
It's the last time I went, I was a registered voter, and ironically, my name did not appear on that clipboard. So what do they have to do is they had to send me to a different line to get a different packet because I had to register to vote and vote all at the exact same time, which was really strange. My votes didn't even get counted until a week later. They said it takes like a week for them to go through and redo the registration process, and anybody in this one box who also had to register for whatever reason, they would get counted in about a week. But, they come out with the preliminary results, which is prior to the absentee ballots. It's prior to all those type of ballots that come through. Has there ever been an election that's changed based on after the prelim results? Presidential election. They announced the winner at, the second they finish counting. But the thing is, they still have absentee ballots that come in for, the next week.
Right.
Has it ever changed the result of an election?
I would say that maybe in Florida it did for George Bush. I'm not exactly
the absentee ballots did?
Right, because the absentee ballots came later, and it was a very close race in Florida, and Florida has a very strong military presence. I'm not exactly sure how that affected the race, but that might have.
I was going to say, I seem to remember that having something to do with it. It's been too long now to remember exactly, but I don't think
that
we
had something
knew.
to do with why it was delayed. I don't think it actually changed anything, though.
Well, right, but I think it was delayed because it was a small enough margin of error that the absentee ballots would have made a difference.
I'm going to look up, have absentee ballots ever changed outcomes?
So,
that and the hanging chads or...
And then the second
God,
thing
that whole thing was a disaster.
And the second thing that comes with my whole democracy doesn't work kind of thing is that, we have a Democratic president and also a Democratic Senate beforehand. And really nothing really got passed besides Obamacare, which I know for some Democrats that's a huge, huge big thing. But, I think a lot of people who voted for Obama, they expected certain things to happen, and very little of it got pushed.
I don't know what
Now,
people actually expected to happen, though.
Well, I thought Guantanamo would be closed. I almost was certain that would happen, but that didn't happen. I thought that we're going to be less involved in the Middle East, but that certainly hasn't.
We pulled out our
happened.
last troop the other day.
Yeah, I was going to say that did happen. It backfired exactly like
how many drone strikes have we done since Obama been president? I mean, it's an incredible amount of death. And
drones didn't exist before Obama was president, though, so you can't, are you comparing how many drone strikes Obama did compared to how many drone strikes Bush did? Probably an infinitely higher number of drone strikes.
How many people have we killed since Obama became president?
Compared to Bush? There's a lot of death at the beginning of the war. I don't know. I mean,
I'm sure U.S. troops have quietly diminished since we moved troops out, but how many people that we killed through drone strikes? I think it's quite high.
I mean, it could, like I said, there wasn't drones before he was in office.
No, not drone strikes. I mean, just people that we killed with drone strikes. Like the amount of people who died from...
Yes, again, if the drones did not exist prior to Obama being in office.
Not the amount of people killed by drones.
He's just saying that Obama kind of ran on a platform of he was going to end the war.
Just like Bush Jr.'s Iraqi war, we threw out a lot of missiles and stuff like that and killed a lot of people without drones. But the amount of people who killed with those attacks versus our drone strikes, that's still quite a lot of people that we've been killing I would say even with less government oversight. With Obama, I thought we'll be less involved with killing people in general. He has ordered people to be killed, American citizens to be killed with drone strikes. So it's
Well, and
not.
unfortunately, that's kind of a product of the way this whole thing has gone down. Whereas we now have the rise of, ISIL because we kind of took our troops out, and now that whole uprising is happening over there. I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily
I was going to say that's a whole
that
Republican
has to do with
argument, too.
Syria more than Iraq.
But
I mean, it's spread down
so
to
it's like it's kind of like the expansion of a war that could it have been over at some point? Who
Well,
knows?
could it have been prevented? I mean, if Saddam was still in power, and if we didn't have the revelation in Syria, where their leader wasn't overthrown, would ISIS been a thing? No.
Well, but then you'd have human atrocities still happening over there under a
Versus
different
other human atrocities.
exactly. So it is
So
what it is.
nothing
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I think
No, nothing changed.
the main question really is, what is Archer going to do? I mean, they can't come back with the next season of Archer and still call their organization ISIS now.
Right. I heard actually they were planning to change it, but I don't know 100% sure because I actually don't watch Archer.
Archer is funny stuff. If you don't watch Archer, you should start. On Netflix, start at the beginning. Hilarity will ensue.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to download all the episodes of What Do We Know from wdwkpodcast.com. If you're listening to us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you.